Hello and welcome. Welcome, everyone. We are expecting an exciting and excited shark fan interested crowd today. It's going to take a couple of seconds for the full audience to fill into our webinar room, but it is my job to welcome you as you do. Hello, hello. Welcome to Alta Live. This is the digital event series we do here at the Journal of Alta, California. Today's guest, Dr. Chris Lowe, is a professor of marine biology and the director of the Shark Lab at Cal State Long Beach. We are so excited to have him. He's featured in the fall 2021 issue of Alta. If you're unfamiliar with us, we are a quarterly magazine focused on California and the West. We feature all sorts of exciting pioneers, innovators, artists, people like Dr. Lowe, who are doing extraordinary research in the world of nature and conservation and learning about sharks. So we're going to learn a lot about sharks today. We're going to see some very cool shark photos too, I promise you. If you like what we do here, I really do hope you'll check out altaonline.com. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Please ask your questions for Dr. Lowe there. We've already received some via email, so don't worry, we've got those. This will be recorded and we will shoot you an email with this video later this afternoon. So please keep an eye out for that. And finally, it's always fun to see where people are zooming in from. I'm up here in Novato, California. Please let us know where you, Dr. Lowe, where are you today?
I'm in Long Beach.
As
lovely Long Beach.
Lovely Long Beach. So please do let us know where you're zooming in from. It's always fun to see where the crowd is from today. With that, Dr. Lowe, welcome to Alta Live. We are excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Can you give us just a really brief overview of what the Shark Lab is, what it does, and how big your team is?
Sure. So the Shark Lab actually is an institution that's been at Cal State Long Beach since 1966, making us one of the largest and oldest shark research institutions in the country. So I was fortunate enough to be a grad student in the Shark Lab back in the late 90s, and I worked under a guy named Don Nelson, who was a world expert in shark behavior. So I was very interested in shark behavior, and he was the guy to train under. And then, unfortunately, he passed away in 1997. And I was fortunate enough to be hired as his replacement in 1998 and continue this tradition of the Shark Lab, where we focus primarily studying the physiology, behavior, and ecology of sharks, rays, and using a variety of new technology to answer questions we haven't been able to answer before. So right now, there's about 25 staff, students, postdocs, technicians, undergrads in the Shark Lab, all busily working right now as I talk.
Can you give us an example of just something in the past, in your 23 years of being director of the Shark Lab, something you've discovered? What's something that we learned about sharks, a big, eureka moment?
So I would say one of the coolest things I discovered, and I did this with my wife, who's also a marine biologist and a professor here. We discovered that sharks can suntan. Yeah. It was an accident. We were studying hammerhead sharks and we had them in a pond and we noticed that over time, these hammerhead sharks turn dark, like black. But when we first caught them, they were kind of beige color. So we thought, well, they're exposed to high levels of ultraviolet radiation. Maybe they're suntanning. And when we started looking in the literature, we found that there's nothing. The only organisms that are known to suntan are humans and some weird naked guinea pig. So we did some experiments and we confirmed we actually were able to get tan lines on sharks. So why they suntan,
right.
I don't really know, but that was something that was kind of a cool accident.
But we don't know why they're
well, I mean, one thing they do probably have lower incidence of skin cancers than some other animals. So it's possible that being able to add that much melanin as a result of being exposed to UV reduces their chances of skin cancers.
All right away, guys, sharks can tan. So it's a win already. I'm going to share my screen so we can look at some photos and kind of make this a little bit as gorgeous as you are. We can make this fun and interesting for our audience. I thought I would start with this badass photo of a shark. What kind of shark are we looking at?
That is a great white shark. And that is a picture that was taken at Guadalupe Island. So the sharks will kind of jump after the bait. And this is a shark diving back in after missing a bait. And you got that kind of moment from the shark, like, it's so nice to be in warm, clear water.
So you see a happy shark here.
Absolutely.
And what I am seeing, and I just speak as someone who doesn't regularly swim with sharks, but has seen Jaws, a terrifying, I'm about to die moment.
Oh no, that's the smile of joy. Like, oh, there's some snacks around and there's some people to entertain. I'm really having a good time here.
So we'll start with kind of a little bit of what you do and the process of how you track sharks and monitor their behavior. What's going on here?
So in the Shark Lab, we use lots of technology. And one of the questions we're trying to figure out is, why do baby white sharks like to hang out at some public beaches? So to do that, we need to figure out how they make decisions. And they're getting exposed to a variety of different environmental conditions. So one way that we can map those conditions is by using this robot. This is an autonomous underwater vehicle. And on its nose there is a set of environmental sensors. So we can program this to move up and down along the beach, and it'll move up and down through the water column, and it basically maps the environment. So using this cool technology, we can ask, why is the shark at this beach and not at these beaches? Or why is it hanging out here and not these other locations? We can put video cameras on this, and we can actually see what kind of shark food might be around, what might they be feeding on. And in fact, recently we've had an issue with sharks actually attacking the robot. So we think they're curious because it makes an interesting brrr sound, and that's an attractant. And they have a tendency to just kind of bite it like a squeaky toy for a dog and then leave it.
I noticed in some of the photos you sent, I didn't include them here, but there are teeth marks that end up on the robot. Is this robot built to sustain a shark bite?
No, it is not.
Tool.
Yes. It's like having a nice leather couch and your dog chews on it, right? It's kind of like that. So yes, we've spent some money repairing some damage from sharks' nibbles of the robot when we're out running it. But so far, there's been no major damage.
All right. And so what's going on here?
Yeah, so we do a lot of diving, and that black device you see there is one of our underwater acoustic receivers, and they're located all along the shoreline from Morro Bay all the way down to San Diego. And many of our receivers are about 100 yards off the beach. So when a tag shark swims by one of those black devices, that device will log the time, the date, and the ID number. So it enables us to track the sharks that we've tagged all along the beaches. Now, the unfortunate part of this technology is my team needs to get in the water as divers and pick these up so that we can download them and get that information. Then we have to put them back. So we do a lot of diving, and it takes us about a month to download all the receivers we have along the coast around Catalina, the Channel Islands. And that's how we gather a lot of the movement data that we're using to study the behavior of these sharks.
You have to physically download it from the device. Okay.
Yeah.
And here you are. This is someone trying to tag a shark.
Yes, and this is one of the ways that we tag sharks. So believe it or not, they're kind of lazy, and you can drive up alongside them. We either use a drone to spot, and they're telling the boat operator where to go. And then we can sneak up alongside them, and we can dart a tag into their back. So that transmitter hangs off. Think of it like an earring, and that will hang off the shark. And then anytime that shark swims within about 300 yards of one of those underwater receivers, the receiver will log the time, the date, and the ID. Now, some of the transmitters that we can put on the sharks also have temperature and depth sensors. So we know the water temperature that they're moving through and the depth of the water when they're being detected. So this gives us a better idea of not just where they're spending their time, but where in the water column, and what's their favorite temperature.
That makes sense. Okay, I think, this photo I just had to include because you let members of the Shark Lab swim with sharks. Is this something we're going to get? I have a cool GIF that you shared, but I've got to know, is this like when you land the dream gig of getting in the Shark Lab? This is for students, marine biology students, people who want to study sharks. getting into the Shark Lab. Dr. Lowe was telling me they have about 50 applicants for 2 spots. So it's a real competitive thing. Is this some type of hazing? Do people want to do this?
No, in fact, this student didn't know. He just wanted to go for a swim. And it just so happened that my drone operator, Patrick, was flying and just happened to get this interaction. So it wasn't until Jack got back that he realized, oh, there's a shark nearby. Nonetheless, my students are diving or swimming in amongst these sharks all the time. So the bottom line is, they come to the lab because this is what they want to do. Many of them are quite aware of the risks. We do a lot of training. We focus on safety, obviously. But what we've been learning is that these young sharks are out there using our beaches every day. They're in and amongst people every day. And as long as we leave them alone, they leave us alone.
That seems to be the common advice with all animals that we assume are dangerous. All right, this is a little animation we have of how a tagged shark delivers information to the device, which you then have to go diving for, get back, bring home, bring back to the lab and download.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So we can put transmitters either inside the animal. So if we catch the shark, we can flip it upside down and put it in this sleep-like state and surgically implant a transmitter in that shark's body cavity that will last 10 years.
Okay.
So that enables us to track a baby white shark almost to adulthood. And in some cases, if the sharks are a little too big to catch, we can dart a transmitter in their back. So just like you see here. So this is all acoustic. The sharks can't hear the sound from the transmitter. So think of it like spy technology.
Although, do they notice the floating? I mean, do they
they'll swim right by the receivers sometimes, and occasionally they'll nibble on the floats that hold the receivers up. So we know that they're aware something's in the water. They just don't know they're being trapped.
As we talk, the photos that you sent, Dr. Lowe sent me kind of an array of shark photos that are just awesome, to use a very technical term. Is there such a thing as shark groupies? When did you know that the shark, you've been the director of the Shark Lab for 23 years. Obviously, you've studied marine biology for decades. When did you decide that the shark was going to be the animal for you? As we look at some super cool pictures of sharks.
Yeah, I grew up on a small island off Cape Cod. There was nothing to do but fish and swim and dive. And I love fishing. And I remember catching my first dogfish. I didn't know what it was. I had to go to the library to look it up. I was not a good student. So going to the library was something not common for me. And I found a book on sharks. And that kind of got me started. I was probably 9 years old when that happened. So as the first person in my family to ever go to college, I was thinking, maybe getting a degree in marine biology would be kind of cool. And one thing led to another. Here I am.
Would you ever, now this, I think I ended with this. This is terrifying. Just as a regular, now I'm a Northern Californian. Yeah. And I do want to get to, let's talk about the differences between, sharks up and down the Pacific coast. I realize that the rest of the world, we could go on forever, but do you recall where this beach is?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, where is this?
So this is off Santa Barbara. This is off Carpinteria. Okay. And, the amazing thing about this phenomenon is there's probably, 40 white sharks there. 40, all between, 5 feet long and maybe 8 or 9 feet long. And they're just hanging out at the beach. And what's really cool about the community that lives there is that they've kind of adopted these sharks. They know they're there, even the kids. So the surf camps, the kids are out surfing, and then somebody's on a stand-up paddleboard or flying a drone. If they see a shark, they blow the whistle. And then the kids paddle into shore and they'll eat a snack or make a sandcastle. Moms don't even look up from their books. They blow the whistle twice. That's the all clear. The kids get back on their boards and go surfing again. And this happens all day long. So for me, as a person 20 years ago, I was truly afraid that an entire generation of Americans would get in the water and never have an opportunity to see a shark in the wild. I was really worried because shark populations were in a bad place. And here we are 20 years later, and I see this community that's basically come to grips with how to live with a white shark nursery. And they do that on a daily basis. I find that pretty cool.
Were shark populations dwindling because of and for, I mean, how much are we blaming Jaws for this? But because people are hunting sharks or killing sharks out of fear?
Yeah, so a lot of that did start with Jaws, right? And Peter Benchley felt horrible about that, right? The attitude that people took about sharks. And it did affect a lot of things, right? So fisheries, it was easier to kill sharks and other fish because people were, afraid of them. So it was easy to overfish them. And that was part of the problem. And in addition, people just had a general fear of things that they don't know or understand. And what's not surprising is, it took us a long time to get where we are now, learning about sharks. And now attitudes are rapidly changing. So we're seeing people want to protect them. So it's exciting to see that. In fact, I would argue with kids, sharks are the new dinosaurs. So they're the things that all kids want to learn about and study about, which is really exciting because they're so cool.
What is it about sharks that are so explain? I mean, I get it, but for someone, what about sharks lends itself to an entire week of a heavily promoted week of television? Sharks are cool. What is it about them that we love so much?
So I think the part that we love about them is they're this animal that has taken on this mythic proportion, right? So they're iconic in terms of what we understand as their role as predators in the ocean. And then what happens is we think of that quintessential shark like Jaws, right? But then we start learning about all these other sharks that aren't like that at all. And when you look at how they move and how they swim and you learn about their history, these animals have been on the planet for 400 million years. They were on the planet before trees. So when people start learning about that, they start looking at sharks differently. So that's the part that I'm really excited about, because we get to tell people about these new things that we're learning about the animals that they're already kind of interested in. And then you watch attitudes shift from being fear-based to being, wow, that's a really cool animal. I want to see one in the wild. And that for me is really exciting.
So what is it right now? What are you working on? What's the Shark Lab's kind of big mission project right now?
Yeah, so we have a big project right now that's funded by the state of California to expand the work that we've been doing studying white sharks. So what we've found is the white shark population has come back in California. Yay, conservation success. White sharks were protected in 1994 because of concerns of overfishing. We did some really important fisheries management things that helped better protect the population and, more importantly, their food source. Adult white shark food has come back. Marine mammals have recovered from almost being hunted to the verge of extinction by the early 1900s. So while I, as a shark biologist, 20 years ago, afraid people wouldn't get to see sharks, to have a population come back like white sharks is so exciting. It means conservation's working. Not everybody cheers with me, though. Right. So that's the other part. So when juvenile white sharks start showing up at beaches, and you can imagine 15 years ago when this aggregation of juveniles showed up at a beach, you didn't hear that in the news. What you heard was, oh my God, there's 20 white sharks at this beach. And that made national news. So if you were a lifeguard working at those beaches, you were like, what do we do? Do we pull people out of the water? Is it safe for them to be in the water with them? So we were studying the behavior of white sharks along California coast. And we got funding from the state to continue that work because we were working directly with lifeguards, providing them with really important information that they would need to know in order to make decisions on whether to close a beach. And we're now doing an economic study looking at the impacts of that. What happens if you do close a beach or if there's a bite? So what are the economic impacts? And that's never been done in the US. So the Shark Lab is really focusing on why are the sharks there? What are they doing there? How long are they going to be there? When are they going to leave? And can we predict when they're going to show up? Because if we can do that, then we can help keep people safer. They can have shark forecasts in the future. So people will know, okay, maybe there's going to be a white sharky day off this beach. So we're developing much of the technology and infrastructure to be able to do that and share that with the community. In addition, we have a big education program because it doesn't do any good to do all this cool science and not get it out to the public. So our goal is to get our science out as quickly as possible. And believe it or not, some of the cool tools we're using, like drones, for example, are really instrumental in changing people's attitudes about sharks. We see people and sharks together every single day in Southern California. And those sharks act like the people aren't even there. Now, if I do a bunch of science and tell people, don't worry, it's safe, we see sharks and they don't bother people. But when they see it for themselves, when they see the video themselves, and it's not just us, it's recreational pilots posting this video footage online. People see that happening every day. They begin to realize that doesn't match with what I see on Shark Week. Those sharks aren't acting the way they're portrayed on Shark Week. So maybe they're not that dangerous. And it is their home, and we are guests in their home. So maybe we just need to learn to be better guests. And we're hoping that our science will help people understand that.
How can we, well, okay, a number of questions here. First of all, is Shark Week, do you not, is Shark Week the enemy?
I struggle with Shark Week. It's good because there are people interested in sharks because of Shark Week, but quite often the information isn't accurate and it's way over sensationalized.
Right, it's like the Rambo of sharks.
Exactly, and it tends to still instill fear in people, even though one of their goals is to try to educate people. And I don't really think you need to do that. I think people can be educated and informed and even entertained without having to be scared. So I have problems with some of their content.
Okay. Is it now, and one of the things that I've learned today, we don't call where it's the nomenclature is not shark attack. It is a shark incident, a shark bite. Why is that?
Yeah, so that comes down to, attack implies something bad, like an animal's mad and it's aggressive. And quite often when people are bitten, we don't know why they were bitten. In some cases, the shark could have been simply investigating somebody. And of course, they don't have hands. So the way they investigate is with their mouth. And of course, a little bite from a big shark can do a lot of damage. But that doesn't mean the shark was acting aggressively. It didn't mean it was actually attacking that person. It was simply curious. In other cases, sharks might bite people because they're defending themselves. And in that case, can you really call that an attack? So because in most cases, we don't know why sharks occasionally bite people, it's not really fair to call those an attack. So we refer to them as a bite because we don't know the motivation behind it. So that also helps not, demonize the animal unfairly.
Right. So how can we be, as you said, when we are swimming or surfing or body surfing or whatever we're doing off the coast of the Pacific, in the Pacific, how can we be good guests in the shark's home?
Yeah, so that's something that we're trying to figure out right now. And one of the things that we do know is, look, you have to understand that anytime you go in the ocean, there's a risk. There's a risk of getting caught in a rip current. There's a risk of accidentally breaking your neck, being thrown over a wave. There's a risk of being hit by a boat. So first of all, we have to always remember that when we go in the ocean, it's a wild place. And we always have to take our own safety into account when we do that. Now, there are animals that occupy that environment that they call their home. Now, sometimes when we go in the ocean, we are not good guests. We don't take the wildlife that live there into account. And we can do things that can actually increase our chances of getting injured. Like, for example, stingrays live in the ocean. They're the #1 organism that injure people in Southern California. And the bottom line is, it's not that they're attacking people. They're defending themselves when people accidentally step on them. So if you're going into somebody's home, nobody likes to be stepped on. So if you shuffle your feet when you go in the water, you'll nudge them and they'll skitter away and they don't have to sting you. That's being a good guest. Now, if you go in the water and there's white sharks around, don't chase them. Leave them alone. Ignore them. Pretend like they're not even there. And if you do that, quite often, they'll leave you alone. So the reality is all these animals are coming back because we're doing a better job at cleaning up our coastal oceans and protecting animals that are essential to the ecosystem. And now that they're coming back, we have to learn how to live with them. And we always have to remember it is their home and we're guests. So be a good guest.
Now, can you tell me, can you debunk some shark safety tips that I have heard that some of our viewers have heard over the years. I'm up here in Northern California where, first of all, can I just ask a dumb question? And hopefully someone else in the audience has been wondering this too. White sharks, great white sharks, totally different things.
No, same thing. So yeah, I know, it's very confusing. So the original name was the great white shark, right? And then it turns out there's only one white shark on the planet. So there are no others. And to simplify and to not give them a big head, we've eliminated the great. So now we just call them white sharks. There's only one.
So up here at Stinson Beach, I'm
Yep.
in Marin County. Those are white, what we are still calling great white sharks, are white sharks.
Yes.
The juveniles are what are in Southern California, what you're studying.
Yep.
Do they only come up here when they're old?
We think. So yeah, once they get to a certain size, white sharks are a really cool species in that they're one of the few sharks that as long as they're swimming, they can keep their body core warmer than the water. So if you touch one, it will feel cold, but if you stuck a thermometer into its body, you would see the mercury rise. So the advantage of keeping your body warm means you can swim faster, you can dive deeper, you can keep your brain warmer, you can keep your eyes warmer, you become a better predator. And that's how this species that is so ancient is able to take down a prey like a seal, which is highly evolved, warm-bodied, social, very fast, very nimble. So that's the advantage that they have. Now, when they're really small, they have all the same equipment as the adults, but their body mass is so small, they're not good at keeping the heat. So they act like a cold-bodied shark. So as a result, most of our nurseries are in Southern California because that's the warmer water. Once they're over a couple 100 pounds, now they're beefy enough that they can retain the heat. That's when we start to see them moving up along the Central California coast.
Cool. Okay. Debunk some myths, facts. You tell me about if you're on a surfboard on a wave, a shark comes up to you, punch it in the nose.
If it's not doing anything, leave it alone.
If it's doing the jaws move.
Yes. Yes.
Whack
Whack it in the nose. If it's biting you or your board, you hit it in the nose, hit it in the eyes. Those are all sensitive areas. And research has shown, based on examining data from previous bites, that when people do strike the animals, that does cause them quite often to release. So not surprisingly, those are all very sensitive areas. All that sensory information is collected there. So if you bang them, just like somebody hit you in the nose, your eyes would start to water, you'd let go. So the same principles apply for sharks. What we always tell people is, look, if you see a shark and it's not bothering you, but it's kind of circling you and following you, what you always want to do is let the shark know you see it. So turn your surfboard, track it with your surfboard. If you see it underwater, always watch it. Let the shark know you see it.
Oh, that was one of the questions.
Yes.
To you is, oh, I thought that was baloney. Okay.
No, that's good because they're predators. They're used to sneaking up on their prey, and they know if they're being watched, then there's a chance that if you try to come in, they could get hurt. So you always want to let the shark know you see it, right? Turn your board, face it, track it with your face, let the shark know you see it.
Got it. Do any shark repellent devices work? Should a surfer stock up on, I don't know, a bunch of product?
So the answer is yes and no. It depends on how well you want the device to work. So there's been some research done on some of the products that are out there, and some of them work about 40% of the time. Now that some would argue that's better than zero, but some of the devices are kind of expensive. And the argument that I like to make is, look, if you had this device that made you feel invincible, would it change your behavior? In other words, would you do things that would be more risky than you would do if you had no device at all? So, you know, the devices can provide some level of protection, but not 100%. And if you treat it like it gives you 100% protection and you start doing crazier things, you actually run the risk of increasing your probability of being bitten. So my argument is the rate at which people are already bitten is so low that I would worry more about increasing my car insurance than I would about buying a shark repellent.
All right, let's get to some questions. Dan asks, has the increase in ocean temperature had a noticeable change in shark behavior?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something we're aggressively trying to study because climate change is real and it's affecting our coastline, particularly off California. So one of the things that we've discovered, and this is just recently, is that historically, white shark nurseries were always found south of Santa Barbara, where the water seasonally is more warm. North of Santa Barbara, the water is quite cold. And what's happened in recent years is we've seen nurseries form in Monterey Bay. Now, there are warm pockets in Monterey Bay, but the other interesting thing about that is the water's been getting warmer off Monterey Bay over the last few decades, which is a sign of climate change. So now what we're seeing are nurseries marching further north than we've seen historically. And that means people might start seeing white sharks in places they haven't seen them before. And that's something that's probably being driven by our changing climate.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. Is your research with the robots, a lot of robot questions, only on white sharks?
No. So we use the robots for multiple purposes. One purpose is to characterize the environment, but I also have a collaborator who's a roboticist at Harvey Mudd College, and we got grants from the National Science Foundation to develop autonomous shark tracking robots. So these robots, we could actually put a transmitter on a shark and the robot would follow the shark and know exactly where the shark is, move up and down through the water column. So it's measuring the water quality around the animal. And we could actually program the robot to mimic the shark's behavior. So if the shark was swimming in circles, the robot would stop and swim in circles. And if the shark started taking off, the robot would follow the shark. Now, sometimes we know the robots are heard by the shark and the shark will track the robot. We program the robot to move away from the shark. And even when it's moving away from the shark, it still knows where the shark is. So when the shark gets bored and goes about its own business, the robot turns and follows it again. So using this new autonomous technology, we followed leopard sharks. We're now trying to make them nimble and faster to track white sharks. And we're even developing a group of robots that work together to kind of act as a swarm to track sharks. So this cool new technology is taking us in a whole new direction and helping us answer questions about how these sharks make decisions.
Max asks, is drawing sharks in with bait for tourism, number one, is that a thing? And is it considered sustainable or ethical?
Yeah, so there's a big debate about those issues, right? So obviously you're changing their behavior. There's no doubt about that. In many places where cage diving occurs, you have to use bait to draw sharks in. And I'm talking about white sharks here. So in those cases, they may use just a throw bait. It could be just a tuna head that they put out there. And the sharks have become so accustomed to the odor and the noise of the boat that they automatically show up when they hear the boat engine, for example, waiting for these little, we'll call them snacks, to be thrown out. And every once in a while, they'll get a head or a tuna carcass that they'll feed on. Now, clearly, that's not enough for them to survive. Think of it like hors d'oeuvres, if you will. And the sharks will snack up, like going to Costco as you're walking down the aisles, and they'll get some hors d'oeuvres. And then eventually they'll get really hungry and they'll go somewhere else to feed. So we know that this sort of operation does change the behavior of the sharks. It's not making them fat or lazy. We know that they don't stay there. Some individuals snack more than others. But by and large, they're going off and doing their thing, and occasionally will come back to these operations. So right now, we have no indication that it's affecting their overall health.
So you're okay with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a way for people to go see sharks. And if people are paying money to see sharks while they're alive rather than having them killed, that's better alternative than just going out and catching and killing sharks or eating them, and you only get to do it once. So in some cases, if the tourist operations are being run properly and the safety of the animal and the people is kept in mind, I think it's a better way to go than fishing for them.
A few more questions. We're going a little bit over. I want to know, in your years and years of kind of shark research, have you ever had any, what you would regard as a close call, a scary moment with a shark?
So we do train for this, right? So the goal is to, number one rule in the lab, don't get bitten. right? So we do spend a lot of time working on how do you properly handle these animals? What do you do if you're in the water? How do you manage and control situations to reduce that probability? When I was in my younger days and crazy days, I used to go out. I lived in Belize. I used to go out offshore and would bait sharks in to do these experiments. And one night I decided I was going to hop in to get some pictures. I want to get some pictures of my experiment at night by myself, 25 miles offshore. And I got bumped by a shark. Didn't get bitten. I got bumped. Scared the living crap out of me. I don't know how I got back in the boat. I don't remember how I did it. I just remember laying in the boat going, and that was a valuable lesson for me. So after that, I decided those things aren't worth it. It's better to be safe. I want to make sure my students are safe when we do this. And that way, there are no accidents.
Sure. Because you're in the shark's house. Again, you got to be a good guest.
That's right.
Jasmine asks, and I'm sure you get this all the time. Are there any online opportunities? How can, for students, Jasmine is a freshman in college with her own organization called Project Fin. You replied to her tweet. Yes. And we're getting tons of questions. We're going to send you all sorts of information about how you can follow Shark Lab and reach out to Dr. Lowe. But can you tell us a little bit about the process of getting to work with you or partner with you, how that happens?
Sure. So we do have volunteer program. COVID shut most of that down. So we're still kind of shut down in terms of volunteers, but we have had those. We had an high school internship program. So we had high school interns coming from not just California, but sometimes all over the country. And we use those primarily during the summer. So there are opportunities for that. Our education program is now expanding. So we're working on a big K through 12 education program using sharks, as we call STEM bait, sharks and robots, to get kids interested in science, technology, engineering, and math. So there are lots of opportunities in that field too. But obviously our boats are small and there's only so much room in the boats. So unfortunately, while I would love to take a bunch of people out, we have to be really careful and selective about that. But nonetheless, we do have volunteer opportunities if people do reach out.
For people to get involved in Shark Club. We will send you, Dr. Lowe, I could talk to you all day. I have 8 trillion questions about sharks and they're endless. Wait, let me just scan my list to be made sure I haven't. Oh, is it true? Yeah, debunk this one for me, that they don't even like human meat?
As best we know. So most people that are bitten by
seal.
sharks are bitten, but no flesh is removed. So you can either take that as we taste bad, or that isn't what they were interested in,
Sure.
or that was a mistake. So based on that information, I would say we are definitely not on the menu.
Love it. It's so interesting how sharks are such a part of our culture, of all of the marine life out there. Sharks really are such a lead character in the what do the kids say? They have a real lead energy. So it's been so great to talk with you again. For everyone watching, thank you so much for coming. We are going to send you an array of ways to follow Dr. Lowe's work, to get in touch with the Shark Lab, to learn more about sharks and how you can be good guests in their houses, which are all waters everywhere. Join us next week. We're going to take a total 180 and welcome. We're going to talk about street art in Boyle Heights in the LA neighborhood and how some corporations are taking advantage of that to boost business. Our own AJ Arona will be a part of that Alta Live. So please do join us for that. But for today, Dr. Lowe, you're very cool. Let me just, on behalf of everyone, you are a deeply cool person with a very cool job. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and being so generous with your time.
Thank you. And we really have to thank the community support that we get in California. It's been great.
Fantastic. All right. Well, everyone, expect this video in your inbox later today. Stay safe. Take care. We'll see you next time.